In previous tutorials, I've discussed the importance of understanding scope, context, and criteria in climate risk assessment. Of the three, people generally understand scope and criteria, but they can be confused about context. In this tutorial, I will zero in on the concept of context and share my thoughts on why understanding this is so important in our climate risk assessment work. ISO 31000 defines context as the internal and external environment that an organization operates within, influencing its objectives and the way risk management is designed and implemented. That's a lot of words. What do we actually mean by this? Context is a central element in risk management. It provides the backdrop for everything we do in identifying, assessing, and managing risk. Our understanding of risk is all about what we value. Whether we say it out loud or not, it's all about what matters to us. This sets the foundation for what we deem to be important, what's not important, what is mission critical, what is not. We perceive risk context through two main lenses, internal and external. Our internal risk context describes factors that we can directly control. These are the things which we can adjust as we wish. This is usually only subject to our own internal decision-making processes. While risks in this category can be significant, our actions are normally dependent only on budget, resources, and timing. We don't need to seek external approval from stakeholders, customers, regulators, and the like. Our external risk context lays out factors that can affect us but are not within our direct control. There are all sorts of things that can do this. Political issues, local, regional, and international economics, social trends, technological developments, our legal obligations and liabilities, and environmental impacts. Often we can fail to notice these things, but even though they're not under our direct control, they can seriously harm us. So in risk analysis, it's wise to consider them and determine just how far outside of the organization our analysis should probe. Let's dig a bit deeper to understand why we worry about context in our climate risk assessment work. First, context sets a foundation for our overall risk profile. It establishes what we deem to be important and relevant. It allows us to specifically exclude things we're not concerned about. We can focus our work on the important things and avoid distractions. Generally, we're very good at understanding our internal risk context. We think about these things all the time, during our day-to-day operations, when we're fixing things that have broken, and most especially during budgeting, where our risk analysis can be directly tied to the things we want to do over the next year or so. Even if the analysis isn't all that formal, we tend to ask the sorts of questions that lead to a good understanding of our internal risks. More often, though, we're not as good at understanding our external risk context. This could stem from a belief that these external factors have very little to do with our own day-to-day activity. We can fall into a trap, believing that focusing on the external risk context is a soft tactic that may be good for our reputation, but little else. Sometimes we miss that external risk factors can have a major effect on our success or failure. For example, ignoring regulatory developments can leave us with few ways to adapt if a new regulation is put in place that we haven't anticipated or planned for. This sort of surprise is really bad for business. While we have little direct control over these sorts of things, we can plan strategies that allow us to transition smoothly if and when they do happen. Sometimes our actions can affect nearby businesses and communities. While downstream impacts are often out of the scope of our assessment work, these sorts of external events can lead to significant liability exposure if ignored. If we don't identify the risk, These sorts of impacts seem to come out of the blue, a surprise that can leave us scrambling, and we may handle in an ad hoc or possibly ham-handed way. We can also consider the effects of events that will happen way outside of our region or control, the sorts of things that can interrupt supply chains, leaving us without critical sources we may need to sustain our business. It's well worth the effort to review a range of possible external factors and make active decisions about what we wish to include or exclude from our analysis. These things often percolate in the background around our day-to-day activity, and we become numb to how they can affect us. But they can, and they often do. So we really should pay attention to them and make thoughtful, active decisions on how we plan to deal with them if and when they happen. In our climate risk assessment work, folks will often see context is out of the scope of the current project. But a thorough analysis of context allows us to establish a more robust picture of the risks we are facing. When we do the analysis, we can actively identify what's included in the work, what's important to us, why we make the decisions we do, and document how we got there. We can be certain that our work paints a clear picture of our risk and the types of decisions we can make using the analysis. And this provides a level of confidence that supports long-term success.